Hello and welcome back to another episode of Notion Bonsai, and today we're going to be rescuing a neglected Cotoneaster. So this is the Cotoneaster that we're going to be working on here today, and as you can see, it has been neglected for quite a long time. It's got this big long shoot going on it here. All of the branches are sort of growing in all sorts of different directions. There's moss growing up the trunk, and I found this tree in a part of a garden centre where unsold trees go, and this pot with this tree in it was lying amongst the brambles in the corner, and I lifted it and thought, this is definitely a challenge. And I think sometimes even the neglected material can make a lot more interest in bonsai than material that perhaps isn't neglected. This tree here, being a Cotoneaster, is really great for bonsai because it has these little small leaves, which on a bonsai, small leaves is a great desirable trait. So the tools that I will be using in this video today are a root rake, a toothbrush or a nylon brush, a root hook, a chopstick, some wire cutters, some gin pliers, some twig cutters, branch cutters, root pruning shears, and here I've got a little pair of bonsai tweezers. And the wire that I'll be keeping on hand is some 1.5mm and 2mm aluminium bonsai wire. These are tools that are specialized for bonsai, but by no means do you need to use or have all of these tools. Whenever I got started in bonsai, I got by with a cheap pair of garden scissors and some secateurs. And if you have things around the house or garden that work for you, then by all means use them. For example, instead of using a bonsai root rake, I started with a bent fork. I put this fork in a vise and then bent it and hammered it down. And now before I begin working on the roots of this tree, I would first like to put down this tray to catch any soil that might fall off of the root ball. The first thing I want to do is get this Cotoneaster out of the pot. And I can tell already, even from the smell, this is a very healthy root ball. Nothing is rotting. All of the roots look really healthy. Before I cut off any branches or work on any of the foliage, I would like to see how far down the trunk goes underneath the top layer of soil, just to see what I'm working with. So I'm just taking the bonsai tweezers and firstly, just seeing what's under all of this moss. And as you can see here, I have found the trunk. I'm going to switch now from these tweezers to the bent fork. And when it comes to repotting Cotoneasters like this one here, I would advise to repot them every 2 years in late winter or early spring. And as I rake, as like working on any tree, you always want to work outward from the trunk when you rake. Never do you want to sort of curl the roots around and sort of try and rake from the other side. Always rotate the tree, rake outward from the trunk, rotate, and you're always working radially. Now I'm going to take the tree and turn it on its side, and we're going to rake the underside of the root ball. Just like the top, we're raking outward from the center of the trunk. Same on this side, outward from the center. And my goal is just to loosen up as much soil as possible. I don't want to tear through many roots, just loosening up the roots and untangling them. This can be quite a laborious process, but I find this part of bonsai quite enjoyable, just untangling the roots. And to help in repots like this, you can also switch to a root hook. This does a little bit better job than the bent fork. And another good tool for repotting is a root rake. Coming down the sides now with the root rake, and as I rake, I'm not tearing down through the roots in like a long stroke pattern. I'm just jabbing at the roots like this, and slowly but surely, the soil will loosen up. Same thing with the root hook, jabbing at it. If it's a hot day where you are, or it's quite windy, you may want to keep a spray bottle nearby to keep the roots moist. I just like to mist them with some water. That stops the roots drying out. And if they dry out, then roots will unfortunately die. The roots are winding around and around multiple times. The more I look at this, the more interesting it begins to get, as I can see lots of almost aerial roots growing from the Cotoneaster down into the soil from the main trunk that's slanting. I'm not really sure if that makes sense at the moment, but the more soil I remove here, the more I'll be able to show you guys what I mean. This is the classic thing you could find with neglected material. Sort of things that you wouldn't even think of training into a tree when you have the tree, but whenever you find it like this, you find natural, unconventional ways of doing it that look spectacular. And this is one of the main reasons why it's very important to remove the top layer of soil and loosen up the roots before you work on the top of a tree, if it's your first time working on a tree, so you can really see everything you have to work with and that gives you more options again when it comes to working on the foliage later. So I have removed quite a lot of soil, and what I'm going to do now is give these roots a nice wash so that we can remove any extra soil that may be on them, and we can really see then what's going on with the roots. After I have washed the roots just a little bit with the hose, I like to switch it to like a jet. I just jet off as much as I can. You can really take your time with this step. Go in with your hand, take out little stones and bits of soil. Now, after examining this tree, I can see already there is many ways and approaches that we can take to developing this tree. It also has many different styles of bonsai it could be made into. For example, cascade, immediately planted it in the pot like this, train this down, and you've got yourself a cascade Cotoneaster. You could cut this off completely and have sort of like a formal upright bonsai and train these up over time. Looking at the roots down here, you could cut off all of these sort of radial looking roots and just make it look like a normal bonsai tree. But I think that this is too good of an opportunity to pass. I wouldn't want to cut off these roots. What I would like to do with this tree is create an exposed root type style bonsai. So I plant it to maybe here and leave all of these roots exposed and let these roots down here continue to feed the tree. Another option is to make this tree a root over rock. So you could get yourself a beautiful looking rock, put it into the root bowl, wrap it around, plant it deep in a pot, and let all of them roots thicken over the rock and into the rock over the next few years. And then at a later date, you could take it out of there and expose them roots around the rock. You'll have yourself a beautiful looking root over rock bonsai. But I don't quite want this to be a root over rock. I would like this tree to be an exposed root style bonsai. And personally, I don't like this big long whip. I think it's done its job of thickening this little part of the trunk here. As an exposed root style cascade seems to have like too much going on in it in my head. Some of you guys might like that. Of course, bonsai is quite a subjective art. What some people like, others might not like, which is why I'm explaining all of the many options that you could do with a tree like this. But just in my head, I think I would like this to be quite a short tree with lots of exposed roots. And then in the future, make this little short tree have lots and lots of ramification by pruning it and letting it grow and pruning it and letting it grow year after year. I'm going to start by just removing this big long branch. So let's start up here. All right. How does that look? I'm also considering the planting angle when it's in the pot. This little whip here, not the biggest fan of. Let's cut that shorter. So now we have something like this. Yeah, I'm going to take this even shorter. I don't want this big, long, thick branch here to be the main focus of the bonsai. I think I can develop a trunk line here later. So I'm going to cut it right into here. Check that out. Starting to look a lot more of what I would like it to look like. There's a root right there, and right next to it is a branch coming here. And in this tree, I don't think I want any branches growing right beside the roots like that. So I'm just going to cut off all of these lower ones. This one here is quite low. Let's turn it around and see, is there any on this side? Yep, one here. This could probably be the front of the tree here. As you can see, this was like the main trunk a long time ago, and then it sort of went off this way and up this way, and then it shot roots down there. These ones here are growing right towards the viewer. I think this would make a great front, so I'm going to remove any of these little ones growing straight at the viewer. And I really want to just follow the principles of bonsai where you show off the trunk line. So you can see it right along there. When it comes to taking cuttings from Cotoneaster, I would advise to take either a heel cutting or a nodal cutting. I have successfully got Cotoneaster to root from big thick branches like this, but it can be a little bit trickier. So if you want 100% success rate or 90% success rate, I advise taking a heel cutting like this, where you take a branch that's connected to a thicker branch and pull down. You'll have something like this. This is what's known as a little heel. And you just cut off the bottom part of it like this. Remove the little lower branches and leaves. Let's say cut the top to about here. And after dipping this end in some hormone rooting powder, I advise any hormone rooting powder that has the active ingredient IBA, also known as indole 3 butyric acid. Plant it in soil, half as deep, and it should root with a pretty high success rate. And for a nodal cutting, instead of taking a branch off of a main branch, just cut below one of the little branches coming off of that. Then remove that little lower branch, remove some lower leaves, and then do the same thing with this in hormone rooting powder in soil half as deep, and it should root pretty well. Here's a little Cotoneaster cutting that I stuck in some soil about a week ago without even any rooting hormone, and within a week you can see here as a proof of concept that's the kind of root that I got. And now after removing all of them branches that was in the way, this allows me to get in with the toothbrush and remove all of that moss. It's really good to get rid of moss that's growing up the trunk in bonsai, because if moss hangs around them areas for a little bit too long, it can provide too much moisture to that area, and you can get things like rotting, or if you have trees that have a nice old looking bark, too much moisture in them kind of areas can diminish the look of that nice old bark. Then anywhere that I can't get in with the brush, I can just go in with the little tweezers and pick it out. Another reason to get rid of moss on areas like this could be potentially why these roots grew in the first place. These roots could have grown because of moss all around this area, and it's sort of ground layered into the soil here. Now if I spin this tree around and we look at this side, I really want to distinguish all of these roots, and I want to have it so that when it's in the pot like this, it looks like the roots are holding the tree up, and there's too many roots going on in this area. So I'm just going to grab the little root pruning shears here and take off any roots that I think are too high. I would like to show off the trunk from this angle also. This tree could probably have two fronts, and it's got plenty of roots down here, so we don't really need to worry whether or not we can take roots off the top here. The tree will do quite fine, but I'm not taking away any of them lovely thick ones that look like supports, just these little thin ones. I think that looks a lot better. It kind of looks like a little harp, you know, like the strings on it. I could call this the harp bonsai. And before I put it into the pot, I would like to ensure that all the roots are nice and untangled and sort of going straight down like a little harp. I don't want to go with the root rake in case I tear too many roots. So I'm just untangling them as if it was a ball of yarn, following where they go, where they can be sort of pulled out from like that. So I think I have got these fairly untangled. And now what I'm going to do is take these root pruning shears and just shorten the whole root ball. And when I shorten it, what I would like to do is be aware of how much I want above the soil level, so that whenever I cut, I don't cut it here, I leave more for in the pot, and then I cut here. So I'm just going to cut that to all the same length. This is all I have removed, probably about a third of the root ball. And this is what we got now. And I can already see a way I can tweak this to make it look a lot better when it's in the pot. These are all of the roots here that are going straight down, but I don't like how big the gap is between this root and the main sort of leader trunk. I would like this to sort of come in there, and it would look a lot more evenly spaced with these other ones over here. And just to sort of help correct that, I'm going to wrap a little piece of wire around this root and just pull it in ever so slightly, and then eventually when this stays in place, a couple of weeks time, I'll remove the wire. So I am just cutting a little length of 2mm wire. I'm going to wrap it behind here and around here. I'm just going to twist these together, and then with the gin pliers we can just tighten that up, and there you can see it looks something like that. I don't want to leave this on too long, as it will create a scar on this little aerial root. So I'm going to keep a close eye on this. If you're really worried about it scarring, you can put something on the roots to protect them from the wire if you want to leave it on a little bit longer. This is just a little plastic bonsai training pot, and it already has a mesh on the bottom for the soil. So to prepare this pot, all we really need to do is feed up some wire. And for this, I'll be using 2mm wire again. When wiring it into the pot, I like to measure the wire like this. Because this may be a little bit complicated, I want to put two pieces of wire up through this pot. So one going across this way, like this, then another piece of wire going across that way. So we've got this little crisscross. The soil mix that I have down here is a mix of pumice, akadama and lava rock, but into this I'm also going to add a little bit of compost, as I have found that Cotoneasters like a more composty type soil, and also I don't want to be watering in the summer twice a day. So I find that adding a little bit of compost just holds a little bit of extra moisture. When I use compost in videos, a lot of people ask what type of compost I use. This is just ordinary multi-purpose compost, but if I am repotting azaleas and I'm using compost in that mix, I will have ericaceous compost, which is a little bit more acidic and more suited to azaleas. I'm going to stir that up with a chopstick. So now to position the tree in the pot, I may have to cut the roots a little more, as I find when I put this in the pot, it's springing up and I'm sort of forcing a lot of roots into a clump down here. And as I do this, I'm arranging the roots where I would like them to be. So this one here, I'm going to bring it over a little. Let's get a little bit of soil in and see if that helps it stay in place. I'm going to use the chopstick to work out any of the little air gaps in there. I'm planting it a little bit deeper than I would like it to be in the end, so that with each repot, in say 2 years' time, I can raise the tree, give it another repot, wait 2 years, raise it again, and through doing this over and over, you can get higher and higher exposed roots, and it just looks really cool over time. And it's really important again that you get rid of any air gaps that may be in the soil, as air gaps prevent water from reaching all of the areas within the pot. And as you can see here already, I haven't wired the tree into the pot yet, but the soil is holding it in place. That's the kind of thing I would like before I wire it in, so that I know the tree is mostly stable, and the wire then is there for extra security. Just until the roots fill the pot, and being a Cotoneaster, I don't think it will take long. Cotoneasters grow quite quickly. And now that it's all nice and secure, I'm going to take the wire, come over the planting with this first one, between the branches. I'm just going to lightly twist that. I'm not going to tighten this super tightly. I think the tree's secure enough. That's just there as a precaution. I don't even think I need this other one. I think it would be more in the way than anything. So let's get rid of that. It's really important now that this tree doesn't wobble too much, as little small wobbles can hinder the development of newly growing roots. And now, just as a little refinement on the branches, any of these ones here that I think are too long, I'm going to cut it back to the first set of leaves. Cotoneasters don't mind being cut back hard like this. That looks good to me. And now, as a bonus part of this video, I would like to show you guys some of the Cotoneasters that we worked on last year. And this is kind of what to expect from the one that we just worked on today, 1 year later. This little one here, it's got some beautiful Cotoneaster flowers on it. I'm not going to repot this tree today, as it's only been in this pot for 1 year. So I'll come back next year and give this tree a nice repot, and I'll probably put it into a nice bonsai pot, as it's starting to take a really nice shape. And aside from the beautiful little flowers of a Cotoneaster, another thing that makes it quite desirable is the little red berries it gets. And I actually have one here that has both flowers and berries on it. Sometimes the little berries stay on throughout the winter and they can make it to the next spring. And as you can see in this tree, as the little flowers are beginning to open, there is still some little berries on this tree. This is one here. They have a beautiful reddy orange color. And if you plant this, you will get more Cotoneaster trees. And on that, I'm going to end off this video right here. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like down below this video. It really helps out the channel a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And please let me know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Is there anything that you would do differently? I'm always open to new and different ideas. If you would like to support me and the things that I do on this channel, hit the thanks button down below. And if you would like to stay up to date on all of the things that I do off camera, please follow me on Instagram. It's @NotionBonsai. And you'll be able to see all the things that I do on there. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.